Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 396, recorded live on Saturday, August 29th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we have returning to the show from the Damsels of DDO, Sahba, Jade.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
We also have from DDOCast and the Sublime Permadeath Guild, Chai.
What's happening?
Welcome back, sir. Just coming off of a very well-done piking of Prison of the Plains.
Oh yeah, they must love me.
You came late, didn't do much, pulled loot out of both chests, and left to come to the show. Very well done. This week's screenshot, we celebrate love in the 236 screenshot of the week. This comes from Bree Baby. It's a nice little shot. I think that's in the Tower of the 12, but I'm not positive. That's what the building in the background looks like, but it'll be a fairly ironic screenshot as we get into this. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, or from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by CyberAirs, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording. Next show will probably be next Saturday. Still trying to iron out the details. You can stay updated by following us on social media pages or our website, DDOcast.com. Another calendar, particularly at DDOcast on Twitter. If you're looking at social media, that's the one I use the most. On the podcast this week, we're going to talk about a little bit of the game news. Not a lot, but there's some in there. Some community news. Some interesting, just general gaming news articles that we'll be talking about. But we're going to start by talking about the forums. And more specifically, what can the DDO forums do for you? And how you can use them to enhance your gameplay and that kind of thing, and how it ties into actually playing the game. So I think just to start, let's go around the circle really quick. And just how much do you use the forums? What's kind of your forum style? That kind of thing.
Well, I guess I'm a lurker on the forums. I read them every day, all the new stuff that people post, but I rarely post. And I just read them to see what people are thinking and see if there's any cool news out there.
Chai?
I use the forums probably way too much. I jump in there like I'm stage diving at a concert, kicking and flailing, and I involve myself in all kinds of discussions, basically on where the game is going is probably the number one topic. Generalized topic anyway that I end up posting in a lot of threads on, and that's probably, in my opinion, the single biggest thing you'll probably benefit from on the forums, although there's a lot of others, is you'll get to see like what's coming up next on the forums, if any adjustments are being made to classes, what new content there is to look forward to, etc., etc. So that's usually where you'll see me on the DDO forums.
Let's say that I don't spend a lot of time on the forums. I obviously keep track of the dev tracker, which is where I spend most of my time, just to kind of see where the devs are chiming in and get kind of the news for the show. I also generally kind of peruse through the general forums and kind of keep an eye on, look out for topics of interest, as it were. But I don't get too... I tend not to be involved, although I will post some things every now and then. Sometimes I'll do guides. I've done that a few times. I tend to stick my nose in where people are complaining, though. If I'm going to post something, it's usually a counter to people complaining, to be honest. I did that with when Fall of Truth, they got the Stormreaver's boom attack working, and everyone was calling for doom, and the raid was no longer completable. Did that with DOJ and the lag. And they came up with a method that seemed to be pretty good for a little while. Now, that tends to be where I post. And if I post in someone else's thread, generally speaking, I'll post and I'll leave. And I don't generally come back. I don't usually engage in conversation.
So you don't go see how anybody reacts to your post or replies to your post?
I'll generally look like once or twice, but I'm not like generally hanging on the edge if that makes any sense.
So you go back. You don't go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
No, not usually. I usually say my piece and leave it at that. I try not to. I mean, I'm actively avoiding trying to get into any kind of negative back and forth and getting trolled and stuff like that. But mostly, if I'm posting in response to someone, it's usually to clarify something I already said.
Right.
Usually, I say what I have to say, and that's enough for me. And usually,
Take
I'm
it
talking
or leave it, right?
Yeah, and usually I'm not talking to specific people. Usually, here's the topic, so I'll post and give my thoughts on the topic at hand, not really specifically at any one person. Unless I'm doing, there's sometimes I'll post in the forums about different contests that DDOCast is doing and stuff like that. In which case, I'm going to go back and forth a lot more often. But so, anyways, I think let's start with what Cha, you kind of mentioned briefly about kind of keeping track of what's changes that are coming.
So a lot of what is actually going to happen next is prompted by some of the posters on the forums. Like, I see a lot of posts like, when are we seeing the next pass? We were told there was going to be a Ranger pass, for instance. And before they clarified that, yes, there probably will be a Ranger pass. And by the way, there's an asterisk there that they're not promising exactly when that will happen. But that's what they're talking about as far as like the next class that's going to get their revamp. That sort of thing is something that oftentimes before the employees of the company even respond gets prompted by the people on the forums themselves. The players are like, okay, so when is this class getting their revamp? This class seems to be the bottom of the barrel right now. When is this one going to get fixed? Or, when are we going to see more content in this zone? What is update 28 or update whatever the next highest number is going to entail compared to what we're playing already? When is the next raid going to be, etc.? That kind of stuff they oftentimes will respond to as far as what the next plans are going to be. They try not to offer like something that goes into the far feature because a lot of times that gets taken as like an ironclad promise that needs to be then delivered on. But they'll usually, like we've had confirmed that, yeah, there's going to be a Ranger class pass. Probably U28 or update 28, but no specific ironclad promise there because it'll be done when it gets done. Then they kind of said that fighter is the next class they want to look at after that. And then they haven't really promised a time frame for that. But it kind of keeps you in the loop as to like, okay, this is where they're going next with the class revamps. This is where they're going next with the content. We've been told that the next content will kind of tie together the story between the last update and Epic Shroud when that happens, or Epic Veil. So it's a good place to keep track of those types of things.
Do you find that actually impacts your gameplay very much?
My current gameplay, no, but I do, depending upon what characters I play still and no longer play, may start thinking of which character I want to become the next class. Like say when they revamp Paladins, for instance, like what was that, around a year ago or something now. I had a Paladin that I hadn't played in a while, so I thought, I'll just LR that guy and play him when that's done, and to kind of provide my feedback as far as like what I thought about it. But as far as my current gameplay, probably not.
Sahba, would you say that it impacts your gameplay very much?
Not at all. Because I find it interesting to read about what they're thinking about putting out, but it doesn't really... I play what they have out now and worry about what's coming out later when it actually comes out, or think about it when it comes out later.
Generally, the things that might impact me a little bit is, like, if I know they're going to do a major pass on a specific class, I might skip that character in my rotation, or maybe not work on it a whole lot and wait until I know it's coming out or it hits live, so I'm not, quote, wasting time, even though it necessarily wouldn't necessarily be wasting time. But I know with my Paladin, when they announced that they're going to do Paladin changes, I wasn't really planning on working on him very soon, but I definitely waited until it came out to work on him, and when it did, I played with him a little bit more to kind of test the new stuff. I also find that loot, like when they start talking about the new loot, I mean, it's kind of more of a Lamania discussion and stuff, but when the new loot starts hitting kind of the general knowledge, I'll generally keep an eye on that and say that, yeah, I want that, and kind of start planning. And, that might inform me, say, hey, I'm kind of interested in getting that piece of loot. That's going to make this other piece of loot that I was chasing kind of obsolete, so maybe I'm not going to chase that piece anymore. I think that's where it tends to impact my gameplay, if at all. I don't think those are kind of minor points. Especially since I have so many characters, so someone's not getting played, so it's not really a big deal. So let's talk about, I think we'll talk about builds next. So the forums have different sections for builds. Do you guys find that you look at those, or you have any thoughts on the build forums section?
I've looked at.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dash.
Sorry, it's cool. I've looked at them pretty extensively in the past. Usually, if I'm going to play a class that I don't normally play a lot of, or if I'm like trying to help someone else out, I've directed people there because a lot of times people will ask questions like in our guild, what, and especially in Permadeath, this is kind of a phenomenon. Some of the builds on the forums, some of them mature later on, I guess is probably the best way to say that. So they're not as survivable earlier on. So sometimes I get asked the question, well, what's a good Permadeath build for this class that can survive at the low levels so I can get to high levels? And usually I can take a look at some of those and make recommendations that way of things that already exist rather than having to put one together from scratch. It's pretty standardized as well with the planners that some people have built. So it's very easy to either find something or even kind of post something using that same planner template and say, what would you guys do differently? Like, I know I'm missing something here. What is it? And then ask for advice and have people pick it apart and stuff like that. And because of those standard templates that people use, it's pretty easy to get help on figuring out what the most optimized version of what you want to play is, or etc.
Sahba?
So I've also directed some people who wanted low-level builds to go over and check out the forums because they do have some nice builds. I usually play my characters for quite a while before I look at something similar to my character. And then it's just to see if they have some idea that I hadn't thought of. Because there are thousands of builds out there, and you can find anything, any kind of mix that you want. I find them informative after the fact for me.
That's a good way of putting it. I think if you're the kind of person that's not really looking to be a builder, I think the build forums are a great place to start looking, and most of the builds you can do small little tweaks for your character to kind of make it fit your playstyle a little bit more. And I think a lot of the builds actually generally have, like, here's some ways that you can tweak this build to make it more appropriate for this kind of playstyle or this kind of playstyle. I personally tend not to use them very much. I like building my characters, and I tend to have a pretty good idea and a solid general knowledge of what I can use to achieve that. Having said that, I have seen a few times, looked at a couple builds, and like, oh, I should add that to my build. And there's actually one of my characters is technically a forum build, but it was a build that was developed by one of my old guildies. He called it the Hell's Angels build. Just 12 fighter, 6 ranger, 2 monk. So lots of feats, evasion, mini shot. A good combination.
I remember that one.
Yeah, it was a good, really solid build. I'm using a modified version of it. I think his was half elf, mine's human. But again, you can modify a lot of those builds fairly easily. And obviously, the Hell's Angel build will be slightly outdated since it's the old enhancement system. So.
I think you make a good point that if you're not the builder, I like building. I have my spreadsheets already when I decide to make a new character and follow them as I level up. But if you're not into building, they're a good place to go and check out all the builds. You'll find something.
Especially when you start getting into kind of the nuanced parts of building where you have to have this stat reach this point by this level to take this feat, so you still have enough feats left to take the other feats. And certainly, I think I even mentioned this on DDOCast, the character that I'm playing there, it was a good thing I did it there because I made the same character on my main server, and one of my main druid is using that same build. But when I did it on DDOCast, I took the levels in a poor order so that I didn't get the feats weren't quite right, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something to be aware of. Some of those builds really help you get down those nuances and make sure you have your feats at the right levels with the right tomes, stats, all that kind of stuff. Because particularly if you're multi-classing, that you start thinking about the base attack bonus to get all the feats that you need and stuff like that, and it gets a little complicated.
And Chai mentioned that if you have questions about a build, you can post it on the forums. Just be aware that you may get people, if you say I want a halfling druid, which most people don't want, somebody's going to come back and say halfling's not the right race for that. Just be aware that they might not go along with what you're thinking of for your build. So
yeah,
you might get some strong opinions.
Yes.
I'd like to have a cool fighter tank. You know what? Paladins make better tanks. You should be a paladin.
There you go.
It's like...
But I want a fighter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but, I mean, if you know how to scrutinize and rule all that out, then it's just like, well, I'm going to post this template because there are templates, right? These people have worked on these character planner templates for a long time to come up with these, and then they put them on the forum. So you could post something on that template and be like, okay, rip this apart and tell me where, what's the best angle to approach this. That'll probably get you the best feedback.
And there's some really good. We should mention some of those planners. Ron's character planner is kind of the main one, I think. Also, Character Builder Lite. Are there other ones that people use generally? I think those are the two big ones.
I don't know. I've only used Ron's until I set up my spreadsheet, and I'll use that.
Yeah.
I've used that one to post stuff on the forums in the past. When I was like wanting to ask questions, because I felt that if I used that and I said, okay, this is what I'm going for, what can make this better, I'm going to avoid most of you should be this race and you should be this class instead kind of feedback. And I get more feedback that was like, well, if you actually start at this stat, you can actually use a tome to hit this stat sooner and then get this feat one slot sooner, which will then enable you to get more feats on the back end and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's a good way to go about it. Let's see. Let's talk about trading next. I've used this fairly consistently at times. I kind of go in and out of the trading forums personally, but usually when there's something that I'm looking for that I know is maybe a little more rare, where I'm not finding on the auction house, that I'll kind of peruse through those trading forums, which I find that the trading forums themselves kind of ebb and flow of what's available anyways. But what would you guys say to someone who's maybe looking to do some trading on the forums?
You go first this time.
Well, if you want to trade something, just go into the trading forums, put down what you have and what you're willing to trade for it, or what you're trading, what you want, and what you're willing to trade for it, and people will either PM you in the game or on the forums or reply to your post. And I haven't really traded. I read one of my friends. He used to have a trading forum post, and I used to read that all the time, and then pass him stuff that he wanted. And I also used it during the card anniversary event, where people were looking for certain cards, and I would head over to whatever server they were on and give them all the cards that I had. That's about all I've used at trading, though.
That was actually that whole card trading part. That's where we got the cross trading forums from. The cross trading forum section from, because there was so much of that going on. Chai, do you have any trading tips?
I usually use it when the economy in game really can't handle the value of specific items as well, like things that people just don't sell for gold, and sometimes even things that people don't even want astral shards for, because a whole bunch of astral shards doesn't really help them out as much. Generally then they usually want another item of similar, what they consider similar value, and that's what I usually end up using those trading forums for, which is probably more sparingly than most, but you know, it's still from time to time if I get something that's like that good and want to either pawn it off for something that I want. An example would be like high-end tomes. I know there's not as much of this anymore, but back when like +4 and +5 tomes were the thing, you could be like, I have a +5 tome of this stat, and I'm actually looking for a +5 tome of this stat. And you know, you probably have a better luck of getting what you wanted rather than putting it on the Astral Shard auction house, getting docked, what is it, like 30% of your shards, just for selling it, and then hoping that someone else posts the one that you want on there for a reasonable price. It was just easier for me to trade stuff like that straight up.
Like we said there, that like essentially a barter system. Like when the auction house and trade channel. I mean, trade channels. I've never really found the trade channels to be overly effective. People just generally aren't using them as much in the game. But when the auction, I think, like we said, when the auction houses basically aren't going to necessarily fit what you're trying to do with the item, the forums are a good place to go.
Yeah.
Personally, when I'm looking or trying to sell something there, I try and keep my posts pretty short and succinct. I know a lot of people like to do, like, here's all the stuff I have that I'm trying to trade. But I find that's a lot of stuff for people to peruse through. And unless you organize it really well, I think you kind of actually hurt your chances a little bit compared to, if you have a lot of stuff you're trying to offload, then, that can make some sense. Although, I think pretty much every post I've ever seen like that, probably at least half the list, I wouldn't ever expect to get sold on the forums. It's all kind
they just list everything, it seems, that they don't have in the backpack.
Generally speaking, they'll kind of list certain things separately that are named items, and that really high value random stuff. But I would say if you're gonna, unless you've been doing it for a while, if you kind of dip your feet into trading on the forums, I would say, keep your posts fairly to the point. You're either selling this, looking to sell this, or you're trying to buy this. I also say don't necessarily put a price in those posts. That's kind of generally how I do it. I say that I'm looking to buy this, or I'm looking to sell this. And I wait and see what people give me or offer me, and what I can do with that. So that's kind of my general rule of thumb.
I do know some people have been very happy with their success posting and trading stuff on the forums, though. So they work fairly well.
Never really had a complaint. I think there was one time where I was trying to sell something and I ended up in a bidding war, and after that I decided that I didn't really want to do that again. So now if I ever do something where I post and multiple people want it, I'll just tell them that, hey, there's multiple people who want it. Make me your best offer.
Right.
And that stays out of the one time I did allow a bidding war. It didn't end well for anybody except the person who, well, I'd say probably nobody really won in that scenario. People got upset, and I had to deal with it. So it was a lot of posting anyway. So I think I've just found that make me your best offer works better than I will allow you to outbid the other person until we get somewhere. That's my the way that I tend to do it.
Well, I would think if I were into trading on the forums, I wouldn't do the bidding at all because I'm thinking we're a trading forum. So here's what I have. Take it or leave it, right?
I don't remember what the item was, but it was something that was really high value. And I didn't need it because I think I already had one. And two or three people wanted it, and I sent someone a message back says it's, I'm in the process of trying to sell it, and I think there was also I was having some issues connecting with people in game at the same time or something like that, and it turned into kind of a mess. Actually, I think now that if I remember it correctly, I ended up in a bidding war, or they ended up in a bidding war, and then I couldn't get the person who, quote, won and couldn't connect with him. And he just kind of stopped responding, and then I tried to sell it to the other person, who then wanted nothing to do with me, so I still had it for a while. Something like that. I think that's how it ended up, but it was kind of a mess. So let's talk about guilds and static groups, and finding those on the forums. We're kind of all established in guilds, but I think at least Sublime has a post to advertise on the forums, right?
Yeah, back when we recruited, which was quite some time ago, we would set up a weekend where everybody in the guild would roll lobies. So we'd all roll level 1 characters, and then we would advertise that on the forums that, if you want to join us, this is the time right here, because we're all going to be playing level 1 characters on this Sunday at this time. And, there'd be like 7 or 8 people would join. We'd split off into a few groups and then run up some lobby characters with the brand new recruits. As far as like regular guilds that are not permadeath, I see a lot of guild recruiting nowadays because the regular game numbers have seemed to go down quite a bit, and some of those folks are now in guilds where like 4 or 5 people log on tops. So a lot of those are recruiting. Some of them are merging, and it's a pretty good place to find players that play fairly similar to how you play, and join that guild, and then have people to play with regularly, rather than sit outside of a guild and hope that there's a group up from time to time that you can join.
I think there's a lot. It at least can get you to meet and in touch with some guilds that may or may not be recruiting. I know, like my guild, the Lava Divers on Kyber, we don't actively recruit, but we have a post that people can, every once in a while someone will find it and inquire about joining and running with us and stuff like that. I mean, even if you're not necessarily sure which guild you want to join, and you may not, you can read their posts and kind of get a good idea of what they do and how they play and when they play. Maybe you find 3 or 4 guilds that you like, and then you make plans to kind of give them a trial run and see what fits for everyone. There's also options.
Yeah, I haven't checked out the recruitment forum because I'm in established guilds, and when I switch guilds, I go by what I found in gameplay rather than looking on the forums. But I'm on the recruitment page right now, and there are a whole bunch of, they post daily. It seems like somebody is posting about their guild recruiting. So if that's what you're looking for and you don't do it in game, they give a little description about basically how big their guild is, when their typical times to run are, so you can see which is compatible for you.
What about static groups? Because I know you guys are pretty heavy static group players.
In the past, I used to read about static groups a lot because before I got into the ones that I play with now, I was looking, and it never seemed to work out at the right time for me. But it's a great place if you're going to go, if you want a static group, and the times work for you. It's a really good place to meet up with people.
I would say, too, if you're looking for that, and if you don't see it, consider posting for a group if you have a specific time that you want to do a static group during. Because there's plenty of people that there's probably people out there that are looking for that too, but
right.
They don't want to post. They don't want to take the initiative to do that. So consider that as well. It's just like LFMs in game, right? There's more people than you would think that want to run certain quests, but they just don't want to go to the trouble of putting an LFM up. So things to consider with that. Let's kind of go back to kind of go a little full circle here a little bit. Let's talk about finding out about news on the forums and how to go about doing that and what you guys maybe look for in terms of news.
Well, one of the first things I always look for, of course, is downtime notice or updates when they're going to happen, or is Lamania open so we can go play over there and check out new things. I also read any of the DDO store sales and promotions. So basically, whatever the devs put out, I read those. I keep up to date that way.
So you're referring to the dev tracker.
Yeah, I am.
Which, if you don't know on the forums, it's one of the links at the top. Although, just to make sure that you know about this as well, the Lamania dev tracker is a separate page than the normal dev tracker. They do keep those separate.
And the devs do respond to posts quite often. And put out news posts as well quite often.
A lot of times those posts become the news.
That's what happens for DDOcast. That's where most of the news comes from, is those posts.
They will there'll be a discussion and the devs will post like what they've been planning or what they've been looking at or what order they think things are going to come in, and next thing you know, that's like the new discussion and new news that everybody is paying attention to for like the next few days. So sometimes it's not only the actual like overt parts of the forums that they're trying to disseminate the news among the population on, but it's sometimes in threads that are just discussing other things that some of that stuff pops up, and next thing you know, that's like the hot topic for the next week or so.
Also, kind of along with just general news is, I generally recommend you keep an eye on at least your server's forum page, just to kind of keep an eye on stuff. I know Voodoo in particular with the High Lords was posting a lot of training raids in the Sarlona pages. Sometimes you'll see some of that stuff in the other server threads as well. Just generally keep an eye on that. I don't find that generally there's a new post there every day, but I'd probably check in maybe once or twice a week if it was me. Not before the weekend, because if people generally plan stuff on the weekends, so you can try and even people that generally probably post stuff again. You can kind of get a rhythm down with when they're going to post stuff like that as well. So it's a way to find different events and stuff that's going on in your neck of the woods. Anything else that jumps out for you guys for keeping track of the news and what to look for? So
Nope, not really.
Let's talk about getting involved with discussions, which, it's kind of what forums really are, right? Is an opportunity to get back and forth and into discussions. I know, Sahba, you kind of keep tabs on them less than posting them. whereas Chai is kind of on the other end of the spectrum, which is great. That's why I got you both on the show. It's different perspectives, but let's talk about just kind of navigating discussions and how to participate if you want to, or how to lurk in them if you kind of want to keep tabs on them.
Well, I think I find the discussions interesting, although after they get past 100 pages and stuff, or even 50, they just keep repeating themselves, and it's basically two arguments going back and forth. But I find them interesting to read, and that's why sometimes we talk about certain forum discussions on the Damsel show. If you're going to post, just be aware that somebody's going to nitpick everything you say.
Including the grammar.
Yes.
Yep, and the definitions of specific terms and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, the thing that I pretty much take out of discussions is getting every single thing out onto the table. Once it starts to become repetitive, a lot of those threads lose their traction. But until then, it's good to get every single viewpoint out onto the table and to see how many people have those similar viewpoints, especially from like a company perspective. Anybody that has like believes a certain thing, if you have like a whole bunch of people that believe one way and a whole bunch of people that believe the other way, then the company at least knows, okay, it's not just this one or two people that are, want the game to be shaped this way from now on or whatever. It's, a whole bunch of people are asking for this. So then that prompts them to start to inquire from other players who don't post on the forums, through surveys and things of that nature. It's like, well, we found out on our forums that there's, people would like this style of gameplay, and then they start popping out surveys, and if that feedback is similar to that, then they know what direction that they're going to want to take things in order to cater to a specific market audience. But the first part of that happens on the forums, and that's just getting every single thing out onto the table so that it can all be sifted through and worked through by the folks who work at the company so that they can make those decisions.
Which is part of Jerry's job, actually. Like, Cordovan is one of the things he's supposed to do, and the community team does, is they look at the forums and see what people are talking about and what they're saying about certain things, and they get data from that. It's not the only place they get data from, but it is a place that they get data from.
Yep, and many times it prompts them to look in other directions to see who else actually, believes that this is like the best state for the game or whatever detail of the game that is being discussed currently.
When we've seen a lot of, particularly in recent times, threads about, here's the preview of what we're looking at for this class, nitpick it, really. That's kind of what they're asking for is, what on paper, we're talking about it in paper, not necessarily in gameplay, but here's what the new enhancer tree is going to look like, or the modified enhancer tree is going to look like. What do you guys think? And then it allows players to kind of give feedback, and there's tends to be some back and forth discussion with the devs. So I would say if you are looking to get response from the devs and have some of that back and forth, keep it civil. I mean, it's generally a good idea to keep everything civil anyways on the forums because it's really easy not to. But I'd say if you are really looking to have get some feedback from the devs, or you have a question that you're hoping to get answered on the forums, don't start with a post that's like, don't title the thread something that's kind of would say, I can't think of the word now, inflammatory. Start with something. Keep the thread title that this is the question I'm looking for, and keep it to the point and make it. I have a tendency to post things in a way that's kind of supposed to be a little coy and clever, which generally they end up not being read because then people look at the title and aren't really interested in reading that title and don't. Without reading the content, you don't really get the title. don't do that. It doesn't. If you want people to read what you're going to write, make the title short, succinct, and to the point. And
Yeah, or
straightforward.
sometimes they don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, too.
Yeah.
Is this sarcasm? Yes, no? And then, that'll tend to not get responded to as well.
It won't get viewed as much either because you can look at the view counts. So that's something to keep in mind.
No, one thing to think about is that I don't know what population of people actually post on the forums, but I don't think it's a significant portion of the DDO player base. What do you guys think?
There used to be a forum post from somebody at the company that said that it was roughly 10%, but then they took that down and they said it's more than 10%. I have a feeling that it's probably less than 10% of the people that post. I have another feeling that there's probably way, way, way more lurkers that post every once in a great while, but there's probably like a small percentage of people that are like your heavy post count types like myself who just jump in and have a higher post number because they get involved in a lot of discussions. But there's probably, I would say that there's more lurkers. And it's not easy for somebody who wants to try and make a statement of how many people agree with them versus how many people otherwise, because all of those lurkers aren't posting. So it makes it look like it's a smaller community on the forums, when in fact there's probably tons and tons and tons and tons of people reading, and people don't want to get involved in the back and forth discussions.
Yeah, I would say it's tough to do too, because what's your metric? Because are you counting people who post once a week, at least once a week, or is it people who have X number of posts in X amount of time or Y amount of time? I mean, it's kind of hard to do a metric there. I would hazard a guess that given the span of a week, probably 25 to 30% of the population at least interacts with the, if not more, interacts with the forums in some manner. Although I think Chai's right that a fairly large portion of that is people who aren't actually posting with much of a regularity. I think if you wanted to get a kind of more of an idea of forum use, you'd probably want to look at the feedback, the official feedback threads that the devs post, because I think that tends to get more people involved because they can respond to what the devs are saying and just kind of give their feedback and then run away.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think that's a lot of the player-generated discussions can get messier quicker. So you need to have kind of a thick skin if you're really going to get involved in a lot of those things.
Messier, quicker, and for longer.
Yeah. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. I want to maybe kind of go into what are some maybe words of caution you might have for people that are maybe new or unsure about using the forums, or maybe words of encouragement to that?
I would say go ahead and use the forums, read them, get the flavor basically of how the forums work, and then start posting if that's what you want to do. Just be nice and polite, like you had said earlier. Don't try and be inflammatory, as you said. Realize that a lot of people that post and are going to respond to your posts are people who played this game for years. So they're coming from their perspective, and that's how they see everything. So it might not be your perspective. So take this into consideration when you're reading the follow-ups to your post.
I'd probably say lurk first for a while, then make an informed decision of if you want to become somebody who is more engaging in the community and actually wants to post, or if you want to use the forums more for like gathering of information rather than like providing your opinions. If you do then want to post, great, it's fantastic. But lurking first kind of gives you the ability to kind of gauge the temperature of like what type of threads will turn into long repetitive discussions versus which types are the ones that you can basically post once in and not have to worry about it. And then, use it for what you need it for as well. So if you need to join a guild, don't be afraid to like post that you're looking for that. If you're trying to make one, don't be afraid to post that. If you want to learn how to build better because maybe you're new and you haven't really, you're not really knowledgeable about the metagame yet, like what builds work and what builds don't and what items people build around and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And know that when people are picking it apart, they're usually doing it from a place of like a higher knowledge on that metagame, rather than like trying to be trollish or whatever. But lurk first is probably the best piece of advice that I could give, and then make your informed decision afterward.
I think some places that if you're newer to the forums and maybe kind of want to get your feet wet a little bit. Some places that are going to tend to be safer places to post are going to be trading, guilds, looking for groups kind of stuff. Those are going to be places that they're probably not going to be a whole lot of things that people are going to nitpick you on anyways. Like, there's not really much content there. I would say after that, builds is generally going to be a safe place to be posting because the people that are participating there generally are coming from the perspective of wanting to help or looking for help, so it's going to tend to be in that frame of mind. Although there will be some, as we said, that I want to build a fighter tank. We should build a paladin. They're better tanks. You will get some of that, but I think it's going to be less hairy than when you get into more of the general discussion areas. I think there's a lot of value in getting your voice out there, particularly in the official threads where the devs post. Don't be afraid to just post your thoughts, responding to the original devs post, and then walk away. Like, that's completely legit. Don't worry about what other people might say about what you've posted. I think there's still a lot of value in making your voice heard, even if other people may not like it. There's a lot of different viewpoints from here in the game. And I think the last thing I'd say is people are passionate about DDO, and that comes across in the forums, and sometimes it comes across as being really negative, but they're not necessarily trying to be mean, they're just really passionate, which I think says something about the game that we play.
That's a good point, because a lot of times I read the forums and I go running to Myth or Less saying, this is what they're saying, and we're all like, why are they playing this game? They sound like they hate the game, but they really don't. They are trying to get some kind of change to make the game better in their view, but they come across as so negative sometimes in the forums that you wonder, why do they even bother?
When you think about it, like, lag is always a constant thing that people post and complain about on the forums. If they didn't like the game and the lag was there, they'd probably just leave, as opposed to, why can't you fix this lag? Which comes more from the standpoint of, I really like this game, I really want it to be lag-free. I mean, that's the subtext of what they're saying. So,
my favorite versions of those posts are the ones that have videos, like the guy that was posting lag in the new raid, about this, like, they put the new raid out. He posts a lag video, like, this is what's happening. And then, maybe a dev who helped program that, who helped code that whole thing, looks at that and looks at the actions that people are doing and then determines, where some of the problems are. And then they do a patch and they say that they've addressed some of the things. Then the next week he posts another video. Well, we're experiencing lag again, and here's a video. And, those same devs can then watch that video and compare it to the first one and look at that and say, okay, what actions are these guys doing now? What classes are in this group? Who's spamming what abilities? What monsters are spawning at that point in time? Like, what's actually happening? And when that happens, sometimes it can look overly negative, like, oh my god, I can't even play this game, this immersion-shattering lag. But in reality, it's like, here's the evidence. You can pretty much watch the video and gain an action-by-action analysis of what's happening. People that understand what's going on in the back end when each one of those actions happen can then figure out, what's, at least in part, if not in full, what's causing that, and then maybe address it in their sprint meetings.
Something I think. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to change the topic, so.
Sure, go for it.
Let's say something we didn't talk about that I want to make sure we mention on as we kind of wrap up the topic about forums is there's also guides and strategies sections. So particularly, I would recommend that try something first and see if you can figure it out on your own. But if you do want help with certain things, you can go to the guides and strategies section of the forums. I think there's still a sticky in that forum, in that section of the forums that has just a collection of different links for different things if you're looking for help on some of that stuff. You can also ask in the forums, like, hey, I'm having trouble with this section of a quest. Do you have any strategies or ideas? I think it's generally a pretty safe post to make. People can give you links to other strategies that they know of and guides on the forums, or they can just give you that advice there as well.
I wanted to mention, too, that when you go to the homepage of the forums, underneath the Dungeons & Dragons online logo, there are a couple of lines. One of them, it says new posts, and that'll bring up any new posts that have been posted in the last 24 hours or so. So if you don't have time to read all of them or go into a certain discussion group, you can get a general idea of what people are thinking of by clicking on new posts.
We'd also be remiss if we didn't mention the fan site section, which is where you'll find the DDOcast segment or episodes on the forums if that's where you're looking for them. Although I think there's better places to find them, but I do post them there for folks that want to look there. You can also get an idea of what other people are talking about in the fan site stuff as well. So a lot of different options there. Anything else anyone wants to say about forums before we move on to the game news?
No, except I think you should post, even though I don't. Everybody should. I'm just, I had a bad experience my first post, and that's why I rarely post now.
You got trolled on post number 1?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Was his name Chai?
It might have been. It was back in the beginning, back in 2006 or 7. And I've been a lurker ever since.
It wouldn't have been me then, because I was playing on a different account.
Ah.
When I came back, it's when I started the Chai account, like 2008-ish.
Oh, you got booted on the one, so you came back on the other? Is that what you're saying?
Nope. They're
Joke.
both still active.
Joke.
Yeah. As far as discipline concerns, if you do find yourself in a place where you're getting disciplined, there are ways to appeal that, and there's a process there as well. And you can find more about that on the user agreements and stuff like that on the forums as well.
Well, you can be passionate about what you post without being rude. You can still be polite as you're posting and say things in a nice, way, and then you won't get any infractions. I mean, you don't have to call people names, or especially the devs call them out for things and tell them.
Usually the line gets drawn at the personal comments. That's what I've seen as far as, like, even in threads where I see posts disappear. That post disappeared because it had a personal comment in it. and it was meant to try and elicit an emotional response from the other poster it was addressing. So it got dust boot, and anybody that quoted it, their post probably got deleted as well. So sometimes if your post gets deleted, it's not necessarily because you were the inflammatory person. It might have been because you quoted somebody and then addressed their point, but didn't make any personal comments, but their post was like really nasty. But yeah, if you basically, no matter how passionate you get, if you don't make any personal comments, you're pretty much not going to receive any discipline unless there's some vague rule you're breaking, and then they'd probably just let you know if that's the case. But if you leave the personal comments out, you can be as passionate as you want about discussing whatever topic about the game that you want.
Good advice. And don't be afraid to, when the devs ask for feedback on things, don't be afraid to at least post your thoughts. It does help. It does make a difference, particularly these days more so than in the past, I think, because they come out with stuff earlier in the cycle, and you can really have an idea of what they're looking at doing, and if you think there's a really bad idea. But don't be afraid to disagree with the devs either. So, I've been critical of them on the show, so there you go. And I've been wrong about it too, sometimes.
And you're still around.
I'm still around. Still enjoy the game.
But he's not posting on the forums all those infractions.
Yeah.
I post every week on the forums.
I'm kidding.
Anyways, don't be afraid of the forums. Have some fun. Go, but use them at your leisure and what you want to use them for. And feel free to ignore the trolls, because the only thing that happens when you fight a troll is you get dirty. In any case, let's talk about game news. Not a whole lot going on this week. It seems like the devs are probably hard at work at the next update. Particularly says that I think they said that it was possibly going to be coming out in September, which is soon. So they're probably
they did say
hard at work.
Lamania soon.
Yeah. So their lack of excessive posting tends to indicate that. See, the Ranger Pass regarding that is probably what's coming next, with Fighter probably after that. The current target is this year, potentially as soon as Update 28, which should not be read as a promise that it will come with Update 28, but that's kind of what their, let's see, maybe their stretch goal will probably be for Update 28, will be getting that out. That's how I interpreted that. After Ranger, this post came from several so that we realize that every player really, really wants us to update their favorite class next. There's a method to the madness, however, and it all starts with the last set of player surveys, as Chad mentioned earlier. So if you see a survey and you want your voice to be heard and to have that make an impact, take the survey.
Now, where do you find these surveys? On the discussion list, or?
Sometimes they'll post them. Sometimes they send them out to people. I'm not exactly sure how they initially disseminate them. But I'd say if there is a survey that you see or they ask for feedback, if you don't put your voice out, then say you kind of lose most of your right to complain about what they do. That's the way that I tend to think. In any case, the path of updates essentially follows the results of those players' surveys. In those surveys, the players indicated very strongly that the weakest characters were melee, particularly heavily armored classes. They also indicated they wanted to see classes with only two trees get a third tree. The Paladin and Barbarian in particular were mentioned as the weakest, and Paladin needed a third tree. Based on that, they started with Paladin because it combines all three, melee, heavy armor, and needing a new tree. Barbarian was next, and they're finishing up the melee classes before they move on. As they've worked on classes with alternate missile functionality, they've been looking at that as well. Once melee is done, they'll be concentrating on a few things based on player feedback, which include shoring up classes that need a third tree, like Favored Soul, Druid, and Artificer. Helping classes in the epic levels become more mana efficient and effective, giving them options outside spamming Rune and Magic Missile Shirati spam when confronted with bosses. Fixing Druid form as part of the Druid Pass, and fixing Monk Wraps to act more like weapons so they work with more abilities as part of the Monk Pass. He's implying no particular order when listing these outside of Ranger than Fighter to shore up the non-Monk melee classes. Monk is a special case due to wraps. He also mentioned that Kensai is not one of the trees that only needs tweaks. They don't want to hurt builds that combine fighter and monk. Too much of the tree was specifically designed with that in mind, and the tree needs to support other fighter builds. So there you go. They also hinted that Update 28 should be on Lemania earlier than the end of September. The new adventure pack will continue the story seen in Update 27 and serve as a bridge between it and Update 29. Which I thought was kind of funny because the story of 27 kind of struck me as really being in one quest. The Fortress Assault quest seemed to be the only one that really had a storyline going on that would branch out. But see,
Right, that's where we learn about what Eretricus was up to, right?
yeah, because the raid doesn't really follow that thread, and neither do the other two quests. They're kind of more about getting involved with the Archons.
And once again, proving ourselves.
Yeah, right. Everywhere we go, should give us like a passport that says approved by all of these different
There
factions.
you go.
And show up somewhere like, here's my credentials. I've been approved by all of these people, some of whom you like, and ignore that page because you don't like them. Game difficulty. In terms of running Elite, I believe this one came from Severlin. He said, until the last patch, playing on a lower difficulty with friends or with a pug not only provided less rewards, but actively killed your bravery streak. Players were totally unwilling to switch to lower difficulties, well, ever because of that. Not only does this kill grouping on anything but Elite, but new content where Elite was really hard angered players, even if the content became easier after you learned it, because players didn't have an option to ease into new content on lower difficulties. For this reason, if they added further difficulty to the game, they would do so in a manner that players could opt into that new difficulty rather than trying to re-educate players that Elite was harder. The playstyle is probably too entrenched at this point that adding more difficulty to Elite and trying to get players to downshift difficulties would likely not provide enough benefit to the game to warrant the anger and annoyance from players that enjoy their current playing habits. It's a fair point.
Well, I think they're thinking about champions there too when they first came out, and everybody wanted them. Not everybody, but a big portion of the forum base wanted them, and then they were too hard for a lot of people, so they downgraded them a bit because it was just too difficult.
Yep. Verguil also posted that it's, a new harder difficulty is likely to just be that, harder without giving, quote, commensurate power. The power was inside you all along. If new loot is balanced for defeating Elite plus just as much as current loot is balanced for defeating Elite, then they haven't really gained actual difficulty, just split players across more difficulties and added more tiers of loot. The goal for a new difficulty is to actually be harder for the players, not just the current characters. Ideally, at the very hardest edge of difficulty, they would not know how long it would take until all quests are completed on that difficulty. Collectively, the best of the best DDO players generally overperform when given a real challenge, so we'll have to leave some room for that. To be clear, they're not saying a higher difficulty shouldn't have incentives, but it should not necessarily be power, especially power you otherwise cannot get. Even additional XP might be okay because it's not additional power, it's just time saving potentially. Then also points out that extra beyond normal disclaimer, this isn't designed yet, and things he's saying are wild, crazy thoughts, not things like promises. In fact, forget you read this, please go self-mind wipe, thanks.
I'm not going to self-mind wipe because I think that's the way to go. They can't give an upgrade in power in the loot from the new difficulty level, because that'll just bring us back to where we are right now in a couple months, where the people who want this new difficulty will run it, get all the new loot, and then say the new difficulty is too easy.
Actually, there's another note that I didn't get to yet. It says they're still discussing internally, but they are aware of the idea that people would beat the new difficulty and then move on, and they have some ideas and ways to prevent that problem. There's also a note that assuming they put out any form of harder difficulty, it may be fine if it gives more XP in total. That's not the same thing as higher XP per minute, which is what players who mostly care about XP are usually concerned with. That said, giving out more XP or any other particular thing is not in any way a requirement for a successful differentiation of difficulty. Chai, I know you have lots of thought on difficulty. Do you want to chime in here or anything that they're saying?
Once Epic became Epic, normal, hard, and elite, I think this was probably I liked the separation better than I liked the heroic lack of separation, where everybody feels that they have to play elite or otherwise their bravery bonus is terminated, and it doesn't. They won't gain enough XP, which seems to be the fear. In epics, like once you hit level 20, the difficulty, regardless of how good a player is, the difficulty that people run to gain XP per minute is normal, because they can complete normal a lot more quickly than they can complete elite. So even if it's more XP on elite, it's still more XP per minute on normal. And the reason why elite on heroic is run is because there's been so much power creep since a lot of those quests were designed, some of them 9 years ago through like maybe 5 or maybe 4 years ago for some of the heroic quests. And because of that, the elite actual difficulty has been eroded to something that most people can easily handle in either the same amount of time or a little bit more time than it would take them to beat normal, but not so much where normal would still provide higher XP per minute. So the people looking for challenge are actually running elite in epics, or the people looking for higher loot drop percentage, because while normal and hard drop the same loot, you have a higher percentage of getting it on elite. Those folks are running elite, while everybody else who is just concerned about XP so that they can do their ETR are running either normal or sometimes hard first and then normal. That's kind of the way that I see the separation in epic, and I think that if there was something like that for heroic, the experience for players would be better. However, I think the dev comment is right that it was left the way it is too long, and people got so used to being able to beat elite that if they messed with it at any point now and tried to re-educate the population that, you know, this is now harder, the amount of backlash that would be caused by that would be a crazy amount, because people are so used to just being able to, at least in a group, handle it effectively. If not, in some cases, with a lot of your veteran players, some of them are even just soloing it, doing speed runs just to get their TRs on.
Which is kind of what we saw with Champions a little bit. When that was a boost in power or boost in difficulty that people weren't used to and didn't like to a certain extent.
And it was very random, because some champions are just bags of hit points and they don't do a lot more damage because they don't have the damage buff. So some people just left those behind and kept going. But then some of them have the damage buff, so then, you know, the last one hit you for 35 points, and now this one's hitting you for 125 points, and you're like, what the hell? Why is this different? It's kind of ironic, because the feedback previous to that was that the game was getting too easy.
Right.
And that a lot of people were able to defeat it. But the first thing that gets put out to try and randomize spike damage a little bit, to try and provide a little bit more of, you know, you have to kind of be perceptive and not just put the blinders on and zerg. That received a ton of negative feedback. And because of that, that was kind of the devs putting the toe in the water, so to speak, and seeing how people would react to making elite and even hard a little bit tougher. And once the feedback from that came back, they probably made the decision right there that we can't really toy with making elite tougher, because the level of feedback that we would receive on that would be a disaster, or the level of negative feedback, I should say. A new difficulty setting, you know, on your last show I said it probably wasn't needed, because they could they could use some of these difficulties for what make them do what they sound like, I guess is what I said. But at this point, I think he is right that because it's been that way for so long, for a few years at least now, that changing it up rather than just adding something is would result in worse feedback. So they're probably discussing adding something rather than redoing all of the difficulty settings.
You said earlier that it's more XP per minute to run stuff on normal. Is that more of a comment in terms of repeating quests, or do you think people still run stuff on hard or elite for bravery streak to get that bonus as well? Or
In epics, it's more XP per minute to Zerg normal to do your epic TRs.
right, but I'm curious if you or do you find that people still run elite or hard kind of the first time through to get that bravery bonus?
Some do, yes. I've met people that, they have their own standard group of people they run with, and when they TR, some of them do elite once through, but there are many who just kill off their entire bravery streak once they're up in the 20s because they can just run normal and still get high XP totals regardless.
Okay, cool.
I mean, if you're going to do an epic Von 3 or, take the daily runners, for instance.
Right.
The epic Von 3, Wizard King,
Spies
in the House, and then there's a quest in Three Barrel Cove that some people add on to that. A lot of those people just Zerg those on normal because the XP per minute has a lot to do with the amount of time it takes you to complete as much as it does the actual XP total at the end. And if they're soloing, they probably don't want to be dealing with higher chance of failure, higher hit point totals, more trap damage, higher saves needed, and they can just run through it on normal and get probably 85% of the XP they would have gotten for running elite.
a third of the time.
Yeah.
For me personally, if I'm going to solo, I run in groups most of the time on Argo. But if I'm going to solo, I run those on Epic Hard, everyone that you just talked about. And the reason I do Epic Hard is because solo, I have difficulty running Epic Elite. Because my characters aren't, like Flavor of the Month or all min-maxers. So it would take me, 3 or 4 times as long to get through Epic Elite as it would an Epic Hard.
Yeah.
Before you could turn off the bravery streaks, I almost always would get to epics, and there were a few quests that I might try and run on elite, like the Motu chains maybe, because there were always epic elite groups for those. But other quests, I wouldn't really make it a point to. I'd do hard still to keep the hard streak going, but cause I didn't really find it took that much longer than a normal run. So
yeah, I don't think it does. For me, it doesn't take that much longer. I never worried about bravery streaks. I go into a quest and it says, hey, if you go on this difficulty and you're going to mess up your bravery streak, do you still want to do it? I'm always surprised that I'm on a bravery streak. I do the highest difficulty that I feel comfortable doing solo when I'm going to solo stuff. In a group, we do Epic Hard or Epic Elite most of the time. One and dones.
Yep. There's one bug I wanted to mention before I get into some of the community news. Percent damages are not currently applying. That includes action boosts, adrenaline, a couple other things. It will be fixed in another patch, which they're targeting to come out this coming week.
I hope so, because last night we did Defiler of Justice or whatever that's called, and the DPS was just much lower than normal for everybody.
See, bonus stage league plus 50% challenge rewards through Sunday, August 30th. It's convenient for me in that I have some challenges I need to run for my new Warlock, but slightly inconvenient that I need to run the level 20 to 25 challenges, and I don't have anyone in that level range right now.
Oh.
Dope.
You should always have somebody in Heroic and Epic.
Just work on the ones that I'm trying to finish.
How many characters did you say you had?
One for every class.
A nunner and 20 to... Wow.
Yeah,
You're
well, because
I
I park them, so I get them to a certain point and I park them, which generally ends up being around 26 to 27. And then I'll use them to run I'll have them run the raid cycles and stuff like that. But Right now, I'm trying to go through all my characters and get them all up to 36-point builds, because a lot of them weren't. So I've been TRing and getting up, and then basically get flagged for the raids, the epic raids, and then move on to the next one. But by the time I'm done doing that flagging, they're, level 26, 27. So.
Yep.
Actually, my the character that I'm working on right now, the Warlock, actually is maybe less than 1 million away. So he'll probably hit that today, hopefully, and then hit some challenges tomorrow.
Well, I do like the bonus challenge rewards. I'm taking advantage of it for my Warlock as well. Somebody's going to have 3 Warlock past lives, and I'm getting the Blasting Chime, and I want to get the epic version as well, so I have to run those, just like you're thinking.
I should look at that. I didn't look at that one.
Oh.
But, it's got Sonic spell on it, right?
Sonic, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Although I might just slot that in. So I don't know. I haven't figured that all out yet. But in any case, 50% challenge rewards through tomorrow. Other stuff that's through tomorrow, you can get a plus 20 Heart of Wood on sale through Sunday, August 30th. I don't know. Have they been on sale before?
Yes.
I think they did.
They actually had a bonus where you buy one of those and you get a plus 5 for free.
Right.
A while back.
Right. I should see if I still have that plus 5. Other things are on sale are True Hearts of Wood, Lesser Hearts of Wood, Quest XP elixirs, and healing items and spell point potions, all 20% off. Let's see, freebie for the week, Omnispell Dust. You can get 50 of those with the code OMNX50, 1 per account. Let's see. Community news, the 156th Chronicle. The Stormreach campaign is a player-made DDO campaign guide, which I'm going to talk about more later. Full Moon Fury offers advice on elemental damage and defense. It's a good, really good article, actually. Good blog post, kind of different, detailing how resistance, absorption, and protection all kind of mesh together. Let's see, events. The Heroes of Hinfolk on Glanda had a trivia event. 11 a.m. today, already Eastern time is already done, but there's another one 11 p.m. Eastern time today as well in the Anvil Fire Inn. Let's see, the New Blood is the guild for the week, a small Thelanis-based guild that describes themselves as professional gimpies, flower sniffers, and permanoobs, with a habit of silliness going all the way back to the Devourer in Europe. It's one of the servers that was in Europe before they merged over here. This friendly and long-running guild is looking for fun folks to join them, find them on Thelanis, and send a member a tell. The comment for the week: what is your preferred elemental damage type?
I'm not sure I have a preferred because I don't usually play caster types. I like when Myth does her ice stuff, and it used to have a really good sound effect to it, but I like freezing things. And I also like how the acid kind of looks coming off a Warlock's hand,
Jade, do you have a favorite elemental type?
I usually start with fire if I'm doing a Sork. But I do like the acid element as well, especially if you're talking about like weapon damage, because there's not a lot that's immune to it for most of the earlier levels.
Acid is generally kind of my favorite. It's changed over the years. For a while, particularly on my Sork, I was Ice Savant, because it was the best kind of single point target damage that you could get. And then started needing to do more area effects, so I kind of went more to Acid because it has more area effect stuff. And like I said, not very much is immune to it. And actually, if you look at the epic raid bosses right now, there's a pretty good mix because the devils are resistant to acid, but you can hit them pretty good with electric damage. On the flip side, all of the liches are immune to electric and cold, but not acid. So, which is also part of the reason why I've been in acid for a while, is because of Mark of Death and Truth, both being immune to cold and electric. So, acid became a go-to choice. Let's see. Fansite news. DDOCast focused on necklaces last week. We got a shout out for that. Dido Gamer broke down named weapons by type in some graphs. The Players News discussed Update 27 on their last show. Confessions of a Geek Mom has a Facebook page. And Enrique looked at the Dorger links in a new blog post. And House of Grouse wrote about Favor. Other stuff going on for the Chronicle. Fridays at 4 went into Defiler of the Just recently, and the DDO stream is expanding with more new shows all week long, so you can check out their schedule. Other blog posts I wanted to mention, Ordos Eclectica, this is kind of relevant to what we were talking about earlier, had a post about his playstyle, which basically came down to several people took issue with one of his builds, his Moncture not having improved precise shot, and he kind of explained why he doesn't like it, which mostly came down to he doesn't like having too much aggro. I could totally respect that opinion. I would probably still take it and then just toggle it off if that was a concern. But, it's his build, his choice. Tactilicious and Craftalicious talked about struggling through Epic Elite What Goes Up, which can be a pretty tough end fight. The Players News had their 43rd episode. My favorite blog for the week came from Confessions of Geek Mom. Was they took her gamer kid through her first raid, Chronoscope. And Jeff on Dido Gamer also had a post that was kind of a slightly different perspective of that experience. Well done, gamer kid. Congrats on your first raid. Confessions of Geek Mom is actually fast becoming one of my favorite blogs. It's got a nice tone to it. It's kind of a fun, different topic, but still within DDO, so a lot of fun. Let's see. DDO Gamer also took all of his pictures and then using photomosaic.com made a fun little graphic, which is basically the Dungeons & Dragons online graphic, but made up of all the little pictures that he's used over the years, which is kind of a fun little one as well. So we'll just stare at that for a little while. Let's see. Forum topics. So the Stormreach campaign, this was mentioned in the Chronicle. Basically, the Monday Marauder static group on Galanda completed a year-long tour of Eberron, and to give the group an old-school campaign feel, he wrote a narrative that emphasized a lot of the rich lore that they have in-game. If you've taken the time to read NPC dialogue, then you already know that there are a lot of really good threads out there that, storyline-wise, weave in and out of. The idea was to create a number of illustrated chapters to the campaign that stitched together different story arcs in a chronological order and set the scene for an evening's questing. It was expanded to a format that allowed them to record the XP that a group could achieve, maximum bonuses, and the end result is a 324-page document, including XP tables, maps, and the history of Eberron. It's essentially a campaign module. He actually was generous enough and sent me a hard copy, which I just got today and haven't actually had a chance to look at too much. But you can get a free PDF download as well. So we'll link to that thread, and you can check that out. It's a pretty ambitious endeavor, really, but pretty slick. I don't know if either of you guys take a look at that yet?
I have not.
Nope, I haven't taken a look yet.
It's a pretty ambitious endeavor and pretty sweet. I'm looking forward to looking through the book that he sent. DDOCast news. DDOCast Splat's still going. We're going to be off this week, but we'll be back the week after that. You can catch all the past shows on YouTube or our website, DDOCast.com, if you like. General gaming news. PAX Prime is this weekend. Have fun, or I hope you had fun if you're listening to this recorded later. Great timing. We had our first heavy rainfall here in a while this morning, so welcome to Seattle, all you people visiting PAX. We also had our PAX meetup last night, gathering for buffs, had 7 or so people stop by, had some beers, talked a lot about DDO, a little bit about other things too, but it was a good time had by all. Thanks for coming. Hopefully we'll see several folks next year. I think probably half the table is people I remember from last year or the year before, so it was a lot of fun. Some other stuff that I wanted to link to, is kind of general gaming news. There was an article on how Dungeons & Dragons saved my autistic son, was the title of the article. Really interesting read about a father who's used Dungeons & Dragons tabletop, pen and paper, to help his autistic son develop social skills. Really fascinating read. And the other one was a another article that adult women are now the top gamer demographic. 36% of gamers are now adult women compared to 35% being adult men. Teenage boys are only 17% of that group, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Is this all games or?
Yes, it's just gaming in general.
Yes, the social games in particular have a huge older female demographic. And when I say older, I mean like past high school. I'm not talking like grandmama.
Well,
So
some other interesting statistics, though, that were from this was, I write this one down, so I apologize if I get it wrong, but it was something like 32. There was a 32% jump in women over the age of 50 becoming gamers.
Yep.
The average adult woman gamer has been playing for 13 years, which is kind of interesting when you think about that. That starts before a lot of those kind of more social games that have really exploded recently.
Yeah, but it's probably because the small subset of women that have been playing for a very long time are skewing it to make it look like it's 13 years from. Like my sisters have only started playing for the last 4 or 5 years, and they do those ones on their iPad. I really wouldn't call them gamers though.
Yeah,
it's like children of the 80s.
The other thing was that the average gamer age was determined to be 31.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting little article, so we'll link to that as well in the show notes. Lightning Post. Enrique wrote in saying, an excellent episode talking about necklaces with Axel. One necklace that he thought was worth mentioning that he didn't hear us mention, and I don't think we did, was the golden cartouche, which comes out of Delares, has a nice little UMD boost that you can get, which can be great at low levels. I think it's the lowest level item you can get that has a specific UMD bonus too. There are you can get some things that give you bonuses to charisma skills, but that one specifically is for UMD. But thanks, Enrique, for mentioning that. That's certainly one that I think we did forget. I had it in mind to write it down and just forgot when I was writing down my notes, I think. But our survey question from the week comes from Barley Lomaeus. I'm going to paraphrase his question a little bit. What kind of music do you enjoy listening to while playing DDO?
I don't.
That's fair.
I listen to deep house music for the most part. Some of the newer deep, like dubstep stuff as well. It's more like it's music that your mind won't snap to.
Yeah.
When certain parts come on, they kind of stay away from like being super like hook oriented and stuff like that. So you can kind of have that be more background ambience when you play the game.
I tend to listen to a lot of soundtracks, actually. Stuff that doesn't tend to have a lot of lyrics, or I listen to stuff that I'm really familiar with. That, again, it's background music. It's not necessarily what's grabbing my attention. Although I also play a lot with like Netflix running in the background.
That's what I'm doing most of the time. But I would listen to music if I could have DDO game sounds in one ear and the music in the other ear in my headphones.
I'm trying to think if there's a way to do that.
The
audio person in me knows how to do it, but I'm trying to figure out how to do it with just a computer. You can probably figure it out. But.
Yeah, well, I have done it like 30 years ago, but with the stuff nowadays and the headphones, I don't know.
So here's what you do. You have one ear from your computer and throw another device in the other ear with headphones playing the music. That's the cheap way to do it. There's probably a way to do it. I'm trying to think. There's got to be a pan function somewhere, but you probably have to get a third-party mixer, soft mixer. But
yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's fair. So with that, we're going to close out the show. So, Sahba, do you want to plug the Damsels?
Sure. It's Damsels of DDO, or me, Lessa, and Myth, and we play every other week, generally at 11 Pacific Daylight Time right now. So 2 o'clock Eastern on Tuesdays. And then we the next night on Wednesday, we talk about what we did on Tuesday. And our next scheduled one is supposed to be this Tuesday coming up, but personal issues. We're pushing it back to September 15th is our next episode.
A little break. That's good. And you can follow them on Twitter at Sahba Jade, at Lessa, Lessah, and at Mythry 2014, I think. MYTHERY 2014.
Yep.
Do you see what I did there?
I did. You spelled her out.
I spelled it everyone but you.
Well, that's because Lessa does me every episode.
Yeah, right. Jai, do you want to plug the Sublime Permadeath Guild or anything else you got going on?
We still do have an old post recruiting on the DDO forums. We have a website as well. The way that guild, or the way that the place that hosts it, Guild Portal, I'm not exactly positive of how to spell out the name. It's like nodeath.guildportal.com or something like that, but there's hyphens. If you search for Sublime Permadeath Guild in Google, it'll be like your first hit. If you go there and post that you want to join us, we'll go ahead and take a look, just read our rules, and then make sure that your character's level 1 and send one of us a tell, and we'll invite you to the guild.
It's a fun thing to do occasionally, if you haven't tried it before. Although I'm a little disappointed that we're not dying as much. Makes for bad television. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the show. Thanks Chai and Sahba for joining me, particularly on a little bit of a touchier subject. And thanks to all the other contributors for DDOcast. It's a great group of folks that help make this happen, and I really appreciate them. And thanks to Turbine for all the support that they give us, and thanks to Wizards for making the game, making D&D, and letting them do that. And thanks to Cyberus for hosting the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous shows, swag, other fun stuff. If you want to be part of the show, or you have a comment on this episode, have a question you'd like to ask us, or a topic you'd like to hear us debate, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment. You can email us at ddocast@gmail.com, or you can hit us on social media at DDOcast on Twitter, and follow us for the latest cast updates. The closing tip is that there is an auto-grant feat for Artificers that acts like a stance to automatically start recharging your rune arm after firing it off. Great tip if you want to play those rune arms. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to check out the forums. Thanks for listening.